that the meeting will be recorded. And as we know from Monday's conversation, that the Deputy Chief Executive, Alec McPhee, tunes in regularly. keeping a note of things even in his retirement. But members, just now call for the sederant. Lynn will take us through that.
Thank you, Chair. Good morning, members. Councillor Reid.
Here.
Councillor McMahon.
Here, Lynn, thanks.
Councillor John McGee.
Yeah.
Councillor Cook.
Here.
Councillor Linton.
Yeah.
Councillor Campbell. Here, thanks. Councillor Maitland.
Here.
Councillor Leach.
Here, Lynn.
Councillor Neil McGee.
Yeah.
Councillor Roberts.
Here, Lynn.
Councillor Jackie Todd.
Here.
We have an apology this morning from Shaheen Mizra, Babs Mowat. Yep, thanks, Babs. Reverend Dr. Alan Vent.
Yep, here.
We have an apology also this morning from Ian Pettigrew and Jackie Livingston.
Right here.
Thanks, Jackie. Thank you, Chair.
Thanks, Lynn. Next item is declarations of interest. I don't know if there's anything significant that's in there that I'm aware of, but this is your opportunity if there are any declarations of interest. No, we'll just press on and go to item 2, and that's the Education Service Standards and Quality report. And Linda will take us through that.
Thank you, Chair, and good morning, colleagues. Pleasure to join you this morning to present this report. Colleagues, in terms of the covering report, very straightforward and brief. Paragraph 1 explains the purpose of the report, and paragraph 2 in terms of the recommendations, in clearly acknowledging and congratulating our staff and young people on their achievements despite COVID in what is now over the past 2 years in effect. Paragraphs 3 to 5, colleagues, explain the background of the report, in that it is a statutory report under the Standards in Scotland Schools Act 2000. In paragraph 6, we begin to reference the main report, and for ease of use, colleagues, can I say that we will use the page numbers from the report and not from the actual documentation. So in referring you to the document, I know there's page numbers there, but these will be for your report rather than the actual document itself. So in introducing the report, firstly, it's a reflection of that which has been achieved by the service, but I would wish to be really clear that when I say that, I would really want to addend the fact that we couldn't have achieved any of this without the support of all of you, and indeed our colleagues across the council from other services, and indeed in community organisations, as you'll see later on in the report, and services in the third sector and voluntary sector. So I would really like to acknowledge that this is very much a partnership report, as well as being our statutory education report. Pages 8 through 11 give us the foreword to the report, the introduction, clearly introductions from myself and Jackie Livingston and Councillor Campbell as our spokesperson for education, and clearly we also need to shine a light on the context of COVID-19 and indeed how it affected education as probably one of the most affected services, along with health and care throughout this pandemic. The context of East Ayrshire Council is shown on page 12, and apologies, I understand there's an arithmetical typo on there, so we will fix that one. So I picked that one up just today after the 3rd or 5th reading on this one. I'll let you find it, but it's to do with adding up to 100. Pages 13 through 15 speak about our families and communities, and colleagues, I think if there's something that I would really like to emphasise, it's how schools have morphed and changed in the space of really understanding. The one thing we know in East Ayrshire Council is that where we have a town or a village, we also have a school, and clearly through the pandemic, the schools along with the other services have become hubs for those communities, and indeed the issue of supplies, be that food or academic or digital, has just been something that we will never lose now in education. I think really, if any good comes of this, it's that real understanding of the school's place in their community, and we will continue through our improvement plan that I've already brought to you to really focus on that. That's something we can't go back and lose now. So if it's done us any good, I would say that's one of the biggest areas where I think we're really touched to see the amount of team efforts in the space. Page 16 takes us through the value and visions of the education service holistically and how those transfer into each of our schools and ECCs. The school estate is covered in pages 17 through 18, and all I'll do, colleagues, mindful that I don't want to take you through every fine detail of the report, but just to highlight a few parts in school estate. Obviously, the opening of the Barony campus was a huge achievement. So, Alec McPhee, if you are listening in today, we'll attribute that one back to yourself, Alex, and all the work that went into that. So, if you are tuned in, clearly the Barony, although it feels like it's been open a lot longer, did actually only open in the last academic year. Loanhead, clearly in terms of the remodelling works and extension works there, extension at Laneshaw, and clearly, chair members, the 1140 expansion took a lot of work, both physically in terms of the physical school estate and organisationally in terms of accommodating the extended hours. In page 19, and reflecting honestly on this one, quality and leadership have been utterly exceptional from our school leaders and indeed central team in rallying behind all of the aspects that we've had to mitigate, be that childcare hubs or food distribution, material distribution, and indeed still the core business of running schools and ECCs during all of this. So in page 19 we highlight, and one of the big places we've seen huge gains are in the digital forums for teachers undertaking professional development. So we've seen a great uptake in that. We're not seeing as many days disrupted through travelling to undertake CPD, but obviously in the longer term, colleagues, that is hopefully something that will come back, because there is nothing better than colleagues being with colleagues and having those face-to-face discussions. But at this point in time, that would be another point where we would pause and say that not much has been lost in there, other than colleagues, and I would wish to be honest, in the space, other than clearly school inspections which have not been taking place, other than recently. I'll probably come back to that later in the report, but clearly it's not been possible for the normal routine of school inspections to take place, either by ourselves at the centre, because I think to do so in COVID times would be against mitigation, and indeed put additional stress on an incredibly stressed system as it already stands. In terms of highlights of 2021, and it does feel hard to do that in COVID, but that we absolutely must in drawing out the positive aspects. Pages 20 through 24, and I'll just pull out some key achievements of, again, our service in conjunction with other services. So clearly being able to put 1140 in place was absolutely huge. The opening of SL33, our skills and employment hub down in Titchfield Street, has been an absolute boon for us in the council, and clearly ties in to the next paper that Cabinet will be receiving today. Obviously, getting our young people back to school had to feature in this report. I was on the Grange campus the day it reopened to our young people after the extensive periods of remote learning. So we wanted to feature that in terms of schools and ECCs opening back up to welcome the young people. And clearly, work around about inclusive practice has continued at pace to ensure we can meet the needs of all of our learners, because as we know, we have significant well-being concerns for some of the young people in terms of returning back to school, mental health, etc. And we wanted to be in a space to address all of these, as well as any additional support needs. So, colleagues, in moving to the further sections of the report, section 1 covers improving attainment, and that takes you through pages 24 to 26. So clearly we don't have all data in the report. Some of that is just about to be published in the coming weeks. But clearly, colleagues, and again, being very honest in the space, we are all aware that there were significant issues in the senior phase, and that's now for the past 2 years in regards to the SQA scenario. You will see attendance gains in there, colleagues, but again, clearly some of these will not be particularly reliable due to COVID and the way that young people were marked during remote learning. The exclusions, delighted to report that they still remain hugely decreased. There have been some little peaks and troughs along the way, but these are hugely decreased if you would like to look at the long-term trend there since 2017-18. We're incredibly proud of the work that we've done there because, you know, inclusion is the antithesis of exclusion, and as you know, one reduces, the other increases. So the big focus for us now is on inclusion rather than exclusion, but recognise that some of those figures have been young people who have been really quite dysregulated on return to school and found it difficult, but we're very hopeful that we have the right supports in place to address all of that. Section 2, which is page 27 through 34, really is an overview around about closing the attainment gap, and it gives us an overview of a lot of the SAC interventions for the Scottish Attainment Challenge. They're mentioned in detail, but pulling a few out, you'll see those related to literacy and numeracy. Play, clearly, in terms of play pedagogy being a huge development in early years and indeed in early primary. Equity and excellence leads, and clearly I think we pride ourselves in East Ayrshire on the quality of our outdoor learning provision, and I'm very grateful to all of you for continuing to support that, because it is a great team, and clearly they come into their own during COVID when other things weren't possible. Section 3 in health and wellbeing takes us from pages 35 through 39, and a few bits that I really would like to highlight is the success of the school counselling service. You'll see figures there giving an update on the service itself and the reach of the service. This service can be used by ages 10 and up. And we've also worked with our colleagues in the Children and Young People's Partnership to look at occupational therapy for those 10 and under as well. So it hasn't just been so, even though it might look on the face of it, it can only be that. We've been able to use the funding creatively to reach even more young people. You'll see in there health and wellbeing developments, and also clearly the impact of our excellent psychological services who don't just work in education. You'll see their work featured via the children's houses, and even colleagues and supporting employees in the council where there's been, you know, trauma or concern. In the last two sections, section 4, which really does dovetail onto the next report, speaks of employability and skills, and I would definitely like to single out this part as one of the huge growth areas for education in terms of our continued involvement with developing the young workforce, SL33, and absolutely superb rate of leaver destinations for us in East Ayrshire. Absolutely thrilled with this, but it's not 100% yet, and that's absolutely where we want it to be, is no young person slipping through that net, and I hope that the report you're about to hear following myself will illuminate that even further. Section 5 is not normally a section in our report because we align the report to the National Improvement Framework, but we thought it was worthwhile mentioning the digital aspect because, as you know, the movement of devices, allocation and broadband, and even as I joked with my colleagues in the non-elected forum, if you can imagine, a lot of teachers hadn't really used some of this technology previous to remote learning. So there's been a lot of learning in the space, probably for all of us as we moved into digital fora, but in terms of teaching and pedagogy and marking work, etc., receiving questions, you can just imagine the learning curve that a lot of staff have had to go through. So I wanted to emphasise the digital section. So colleagues, in returning to the covering report, I would just like to commend the report to you for your consideration, but I would like to emphasise my own thank you to all of my colleagues out there in education and the other services who've made the positive content of this report possible. Thank you, Chair.
Thanks, Linda. Some real good pieces of work there. You highlighted SL33, and I think that's, you know, if any members of the Cabinet haven't been there, maybe take the opportunity to go. If we can arrange a visit, it's really worthwhile to see some innovative work that's going down there, and that make sure that nobody's left behind, and very much sticking to that agenda. So loads in here. Just a wee question for me before I open up. The Grange campus, in terms of the school estate, that's not been included, Linda, in terms of the Annan Hill modular building?
No, it's a retrospective report, Chair.
Yeah.
So it wouldn't be included until it was there.
No, that's fine. No, just in case anybody's wondering. Oh, yeah, that was just pointing that out. That's helpful. Okay, members, any loads in there? Any points? Anybody? Fiona?
Yes, thanks, Chair. Apologies this morning for not having my corporate background up. I've got a bare Christmas card holder up behind me today. I don't know how to get the corporate background back up, so I'm sorry for looking so casual today. Anyway, Linda, thank you for bringing this report to Cabinet. And I want to reiterate my thanks to everyone for continuing to deliver the service during a period of great adversity. And of course, unfortunately, the challenges are ongoing for the education service with so many staff shortages. So I think it's a testament to everyone that we have actually managed to keep the schools open. So I think that's very much worth saying. Before I address the report itself, I want to congratulate you and your teams on the signing off of Dalrymple from continuing engagement. This means that no school and no ECC in East Ayrshire is subject to ongoing involvement with Education Scotland. This is a significant moment for East Ayrshire education, and your leadership, Linda, has driven this achievement, so thank you very much. Ultimately, this is all about maximising the potential of our pupils, and the report highlights many positives. And I'm not going to apologise for repeating some of the highlights that Linda has already pulled out. But for me, the opening of the Employability Hub, the continuing improvement of our school estate, the delivery of the 1140 hours of early learning, the expansion of the school counselling service, the absolutely dramatic decline in the exclusion rate, and the 94.72% progressing to positive destinations are all worthy of praise and comment, and indeed repeating. This report is a credit to all involved, the staff, the parents, the pupils and the carers, all who have shown great resilience and commitment in these most challenging of circumstances. So thank you very much, Linda. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Fiona, and thanks to yourself in there as well. Tom.
Thanks, Chair. Thanks, Linda, for the going through that this morning. And you know, I know it's been a difficult time for people across education, trying to make sure that our young people are still getting the best that they can, despite all the issues of working from home and remote working and remote teaching. I know it's been very difficult. I've just got one or two points, just maybe to clear up, Linda, and some comments. I know on page 24 under the attainment, in terms of reading, writing, learning, listening and literacy, numeracy, we've no figures for 2019-20. I don't know if that's just a timing issue. Maybe you can confirm that, because I think it's important that we do have these figures so that we continue to monitor that, because as we go forward, we need to find out just what our young people have lost in terms of education, if they've fallen back in any of these, for their age, in terms of reading, writing, numeracy. So that was the first point, Linda. Second point was in relation to page 26, the exclusions, and you're right. There's been a huge reduction in exclusions over the years. If we go back to 5 years. But there's been a big jump in between 1920 and 2021 in secondary schools. I suppose that's maybe just surprising me, and because, you know, over a lot of that period, children were working from home, young people were at home. So I'm just surprised to see that. Maybe there's a reason that you could explain. And finally, on page 41, we were talking about positive destinations and, you know, people getting into them. It does say that we do try to monitor them once they go into that, but how long do we monitor them to make sure that they actually stay within that destination? And if they come for any reason out of it, whether they drop out of college or, you know, they don't continue with their employment, how long do we keep going to try and make sure that these people are getting all the support they need, Linda? Sorry, it's a number of questions, but I think the rest important. Thanks.
Thanks,
No,
Tom.
thanks,
Linda?
Councillor Cook. They're all valid. Colleagues, if there's data missing in your report, it's because it wasn't collected. So it's not a localised issue. So if there's any data missing, it's due to the fact that the Scottish Government didn't collect data in that year. And please be reassured, members, that our monitoring and tracking system in East Ayrshire is absolutely second to none. It's award-winning nationally in terms of how we track our young people. But to give you an update, there will be data published. That will be next week. I believe it's the 14th. So we are expecting further data, but it won't be the 1920 data due to that not being collected, because by the 20 we were in lockdown and it wasn't feasible to collect data at that stage when the young people hadn't been in school since March. In the exclusions, it's the secondary piece is a reflection to an extent on how some of the young people went back and that they struggled to go back. And actually, when I granulate those exclusions further, which we did, some of those are young people who ended up, you know, excluded, or I can't go down too far into that in terms of identification, but who were excluded on repeated occasions, some of which were quite publicised cases. So I think, to be honest, we're not concerned longer term with this, because if you recall, colleagues, we have inclusion hubs in 5 of our 7 secondary schools at the moment, and that gives young people a chance to regress into smaller group learning and access the mainstream at the same time. So we've got the infrastructure there to serve that. So while there would be a small increase there, it's not something that in the longer term I'm concerned about. But we did have some young people who did find it quite hard after a period of, you know, extended remote learning to enter that again. So coming back to you on that one. In terms of positive destinations, Councillor Cook, a lot of this doesn't sit with the Education Service. It sits as a joint responsibility with Skills Development Scotland. So in regard to sustained positive destinations, to be honest, and I think from what you'll hear from David as well, because of the joint working across education and employability or economic growth, we're actually with the young people now, generally speaking, from 16 through to 24, much better and clearer relationships with the college in terms of young people sustaining courses. And actually, one of the issues that were pulled out recently, Councillor Cook, to go into that even further. Now, it's not been the case for a few years, but sometimes some of the non-sustained destinations are actually young people that go to university and don't like it. So ultimately, we need to build that infrastructure around all of this. So it is difficult to keep track on, but given the partnerships in place with Skills Development Scotland, our colleagues in FE and HE, and Ian Burgoyne, who'll be with us for the next paper as well, and the work through SL33, I think that percentage will literally continue to increase, because there's very little gaps now for the young people to fall through. And indeed, one of the most exposed gaps is going to uni, because our assumption is that when they go to uni that they're clearly going to continue in their course, but actually for a lot of young people the gap is just too big. So that's something that we need to continue to work on in terms of readiness to go, but certainly we don't let them go because of the partnerships that we have, Councillor Cook, in terms of sustained positive destinations.
Tom?
No, thanks for that, Linda. No, I do realise it's not all sitting within education in terms of employability, but it's good to hear that the partnerships are working to try and maintain that, you know, that employability. And I understand what you mean about people dropping out of university. It happened to my son after a year, but fortunately it went on elsewhere. And just going back to the literacy and numeracy, the primary education, do we have a way of measuring how far, if any, the young people have dropped over the period of the lockdown, and, you know, to what we've got to bring back again? You know, is it measured in months or years in terms of the actual learning that they've lost.
Thanks, Councillor Cook. This is the subject of mass research at the moment, to be honest, because what we can't do is apply a linear model to potential loss of learning, or indeed introduce a catch-up agenda. It's about meeting every young person where they are, because actually some really rich learning took place during the remote period, as much as that's not what we would certainly want for our young people in the longer term. So at this point in time, clearly the ASL data will be published next week. We know that there has been some regression in there, as it has been the case in other authorities as well. Clearly this is a national issue, and it's about the day-to-day now with the staff who know these young people really well in the primary schools and the secondary schools, and indeed I suppose ECCs, who've had the same, about meeting the young people exactly where they are in terms of providing an individualised approach, because some young people may have had some quite intensive support at home, and for other young people that might have been quite a different scenario. So it's really important that we don't even attempt to measure in months or years, because the linear model is not something that can be applied to something as complex as learning. But to answer the question, clearly it's something we're acutely aware of, and via the work that we continually do in terms of assessing young people and using our monitoring and tracking system. And remember that each time that a teacher puts these grades in, there's a further discussion to be had with a principal teacher and indeed a head teacher. So it's a system-wide approach to ensuring that our young people achieve the best they can. Clearly one of the bigger issues, and Councillor Cook, I'm just going to pull this one through, will clearly be the SQA piece for senior phase coming forward, but we will bring a further paper to Cabinet on that in due course.
No, thanks, Linda. That's cleared that up. Thank you.
John?
Hi, thanks, Chair. Hi, Linda. Thanks for that report. And first of all, I would like to wholeheartedly congratulate the children and young people East Ayrshire on their achievements and recognise ongoing support they receive from our teachers, support staff, local authority officers and managers, and appreciate the learning, probably especially the learning the teachers had to achieve during the pandemic. But my questions regard to closing the attainment gap. My view is we've not closed the attainment gap despite our best efforts, and agree with the SAC progress report, which stated that we are making satisfactory progress. The report also outlined aspects for development which were increase the pace of progress in closing the poverty-related attainment gap and improve approaches to using data to support this. The approaches to sustainability should be more formally documented and shared with elected members to provide them with assurances that the most effective interventions provided through the Scottish Attainment Challenge are embedded within schools. Improve the rates of attendance and continue to reduce exclusions, while also addressing the variations in these between schools. So my question is, given that we're going to face £2.5 million of cuts in the Scottish Attainment Challenge funding coming, how are we going to increase the pace of progress and continue to close the attainment gap?
So, Councillor McGee, thank you first of all for your kind words in respect of the standards and quality report that I'm presenting today. In regards to the report on SAC, that was written in September 2018. That report's now 3 years old, following a visit by colleagues in Education Scotland to the authority, and in my mind is completely unrecognisable from where we are. There's a flaw, as you will see, in terms of how approaches to closing the attainment gap have worked. And for us in East Ayrshire, a simple calculation of 7D5 subtract 7D1 really doesn't cut it, because of the demograph of our young people being predominantly 1, 2, 4 with a patch of 7 and some tiny granular pieces of 10 in terms of a 7D. So I suppose, you know, I'm certainly not here today to look at the Scottish Attainment Challenge particularly, but to answer the question, the report you've quoted was September 18. I take on board what the findings of that report were, and indeed we have acted on all of those. But I have certainly no suggestion that we've not managed to close the attainment gap, because ultimately, if you look at the attainment that we have through the key measures that we use, that attainment has indeed continued to rise, and indeed all authorities will see the impact of COVID on their attainment figures. And as colleagues here will know, we were absolutely meticulous in our approach to SQA and didn't attempt to massage figures in any way, shape or form. So I think in coming back to the question about the monies, we will be back at Cabinet with a strategy for what this will look like in terms of the tapering of the money over the next 4 years, and still being able to sustain and look at the attainment gap. But actually the attainment gap is more about equity. Our young people in East Ayrshire deserve an equitable chance, and we really do not have the polar parts of 75 minus 71, which was always an issue that I've explained on several occasions around about how to calculate an attainment gap. Gaps can exist for a multitude of reasons, either through, family circumstances, poverty circumstances, but they're certainly not particularly simply measured by postcode. And colleagues, as you may or may not know, in the next tranche of SAC, SIMD is abandoned in favour of what's known as SILIF. And that is to do with the Scottish Index of Low Income Families, which is actually what it always should have been based on. So as we move forward, we have the data that we need. We will continue, as we have always done, to bring reports in front of Cabinet and indeed GNS in terms of our performance. There's not anything that's not been brought to members' attention, but I certainly would not particularly take the point that using 75 minus 1 gives us a fresh or indeed detailed look at attainment here in East Ayrshire, which clearly we're incredibly proud of.
Thanks, Linda. The attainment challenge, it's regrettable that, as amongst the other 8 authorities, we're losing that money over the 4-year period, but we'll do our best to retain some of the major successes we've had, like home link workers. It's just how we do that, and it's going to be a challenge for us. That's absolutely right. But hopefully there'll be some papers, in the months to come to see how we're going to address some of these issues. But hopefully we can keep some of the best examples of what's been really effective through some of that money. John?
Just for clarity, I wasn't suggesting that there had been anything that wasn't brought before Council, Cabinet or Governance and Scrutiny. So I want to make that absolutely clear. That was not my suggestion at all. But I can't believe that if we got a cut of 2.5 million to the Scottish Attainment Challenge Fund, that it's not going to have some impact on how we deliver our services. That's the point I'm trying to make. Thank you.
Absolutely. I don't think you couldn't disagree with that, but it's just how we do that. It's got to give our attention, and we need to, minimise the pain of that as much as possible. We've been fortunate to have that money, but it's not going to be painless in terms of losing that amount of funding. But we've just got to kind of do our best to retain the best parts of that funding, the best parts of the service that has been funded through that money, should I say. Councillor Roberts, Jim.
Thanks very much, Chair. Good morning, Linda. It's an excellent report. Very well done. Echo the sentiments of my colleagues. You gave quite a comprehensive answer in regard to John's question. But I don't think you solve problems with throwing money at them. I think we all agree there's different ways of solving problems. If you look at the likes of the Pupil Equity Fund, where that money was given directly to head teachers, because they were best placed to address particular local problems, local issues, and it was up to them how they spent that money in terms of best spend. But what I would like to take us on to is the likes of the money we've spent improving the school estates. Now, when I came into council in 2007, one of the things I kept hearing on a constant basis was the learning and teaching environment, how it was so important to the likes of children's education, well-being, and over the years we've spent an absolute fortune, and that's reflected on pages 17 and 18, and also the early childhood centres as well, recognising the importance of the early years framework and the benefits it brings, not just to children but to families as well. But carrying on to page 45, the digital transformation. I think we all recognise now the pandemic has highlighted the importance of digital connectivity, but the initiative through the Scottish Government, which is halfway down that page in page 40, we purchased 2,592 devices and 120 Wi-Fi units. And there's also different initiatives going through the Scottish Government, to increase the broadband speed. So connectivity is so important. But I think, getting back to the context of this report, Linda, once again, good report card, and thank you very much.
Thanks, Jim. Jackie.
Hello, I'm just going to echo all the comments already made, that it's a fantastic report, and it's nice to see that it's still in a user-friendly parental way to understand the language. It's been a long time, but done a fantastic work. If you look back over the year, it's amazing what we've actually achieved. Yes, there are some niggly little issues, but on the whole, we've done fantastic well, and we all continue to work together. The parents are considered to be partners. Thanks, Linda.
Thanks, Jackie. Councillor McMahon, Jim.
Thanks, Chair. Again, Linda, thanks for the report and the way it's been laid out. Splendid report. And echo your sentiments again. You mentioned Alan McPhee at the start, and if he is listening, I'd like to express my gratitude again. The Barna campus open a year. Unfortunately, we've not been able to access all the facilities for the community within that year. I think when that opportunity does arise, we'll see the full potential of the Barna campus and it really flourishing, whether that's the indoor sports facilities, whether it's Piper's Cafe or whether it's a 500-seater auditorium within that. So I look forward to the day when the public can really utilise that as a community facility. Just a couple of things I'd like to pick up on off the back of the last 20 months in COVID and what's likely to go forward for a wee while yet. I think it's vital for our young people, the wellbeing and psychological services that's there, bearing in mind the impact it's had on them over the last 20 months. I'm delighted with the Litter in Schools initiative. I'm absolutely delighted with the video that was produced for and our free hedgehogs that go along with that to display that to our kids. I think there's been significant impact visually for this initiative has been rolled out in as far as litter in school goes. So just thanks again, Linda, for the report, and thank you once again to all the staff, our teaching staff, janitorial staff, everybody that's participated in that in delivering our education services, and to the pupils. I think it's been a really, really difficult time, but once again, thank you.
Okay, thanks, members. I think Jackie makes a good point. It's very readable. It's very easy to follow, and that's very useful. Any others? No. Can we go to recommendations way back in page number 3? There's 2 there. Can we agree recommendations? Okay, thanks. And on to the next item, which is an overview of the challenging landscape of employability, together with specific proposals to address those changes and to deliver additional resources from the Scottish Government. Linda, you take us through that? Or is it, sorry, David?
Chair, yes. It will be David McDowell. I am remaining here because it's a joint effort, and Ian Burgoyne's also here. So no, I'll pass you over to David, Chair. Thanks,
Linda. No, it's a joint report. That's on you go, David. Thanks,
morning,
Linda.
Chair. The employability paper before you this morning is a joint education and economic growth report to provide Cabinet with an overview of the challenging landscape of employability support and initial actions designed to address those changes, including additional tranches of Scottish Government funding. Paragraphs 3 through to 6 set out the background employability theme of the Community Planning Partnership and the work pre-COVID to deliver Ayrshire's all-age employability support. provided through the banner of East Ayrshire Works by the team within Economic Development, funded by EU funding and Scottish Government contracts, and supported by colleagues in education and partners across the area. Paragraphs 7 through to 16 sets out the current position with the impending removal of EU funding, the impacts from COVID, with Scottish Government providing additional funding to all local authorities and their respective local employability partners to support employability work with a specific aim to support communities to access and sustain employment under the all-age provision labelled No One Left Behind. The Scottish Government has been clear that No One Left Behind must be delivered through integral and alignment of a variety of local and national supports and services, and that locally it must be directed and commissioned by the local employability partnership, which will be the engine room for employability. While other projects and groups will continue their focused work on particular aspects of employability or in a particular client group, such as Young Persons Guarantee Board, they will report into the local employability partnership, where strategic direction and leadership will sit. Scottish Government reinforced this position by announcing a commitment to transfer the governance of all its employability funding to the local employability partnership, with local authorities acting as lead authorities for financial management. This effectively means that local employability partnerships will determine the use of these resources and commission providers locally to deliver on their behalf. Appendix 1 sets out the terms of reference for the local employability partnership, with appropriate representation from this group comprising the Council's Education, Employability, Environment, Community Services, Health and Social Care Partnership, the Department for Work and Pensions, Skills Development Scotland, Ayrshire College, NHS, Ayrshire Nairn, and the East Ayrshire Third Sector Interface. Government will set out the transfer of responsibilities to the local employability partnership in the forthcoming months, and this will be facilitated by a new data sharing agreement allowing access to all service user data currently held. Members, the draft agreement is currently being considered by COSLA and will be subject to further scrutiny by legal services colleagues in the Council prior to any sign-off. The complexity of the range of employability roles at local, regional and national level is highlighted in the diagram in paragraph 11, with the local employability partnership coordinating multiple agencies and funding streams. To support this work, the new local employability partnership action plan is attached in Appendix 2, providing a clear sense of the direction of travel and a commitment of all partners to ensure that employability remains a responsive service upon which individuals can rely. The action plan covers 9 themes, from leadership and relationships, governance, community engagement through to performance management, reporting and impacts. Paragraph 14 summarises the role and work of the local employability partnership in respect of providing employability support services between April 2022 and March 2025, and ensuring that employability support services are being informed by service users. This takes a 3-year plan, which is a new theme that the government are approaching. Cabinet is also asked to note that such fundamental changes to the delivery of employability will necessitate a review of the Council's current employability arrangements across education and economic development, and any proposed changes will be presented to Cabinet as part of a future service redesign. While these proposals provide a framework within which to move forward in the coming months and will be refined following further Scottish Government guidance, there are some immediate challenges being faced by employability staff in education and economic development due to the pandemic and anticipated economic downturn, which has prompted the Scottish Government to allocate additional resources to local authorities for this financial year to tackle the challenges in particular group areas. Taking into account existing EU funding commitments to East Ayrshire Council, the total resource available to the Council in 2020-2021 for employability is 5.9 million, and efforts to utilise this funding to the benefit of local communities is not without its challenges. Cabinet will also be aware of the Kickstart and JETS programmes currently being promoted by the DWP. These specifically target individuals who would also be eligible for support through East Ayrshire's Young Persons Guarantee Scheme, the Employability Fund Programme and ESF funding. So paragraph 20-21 highlights COSLA's review of the particular challenges that employability teams are facing across Scotland and these include timing of decisions and grants, conditions of grants, future funding uncertainty, and the risk of underspends. Building on the success of the Parental Employability Support Fund implemented early 2020, the Scottish Government has now awarded an additional £320,000 resource to the Council called Parental Employability Support Fund Boost until the end of the financial year to grow the existing provision and also provide additional interventions to parents with disabilities. While every effort will be made by the existing team to deliver this, there is a need to increase that delivery resource, and it is therefore proposed to procure support from agencies and organisations with a proven track record in delivering to this client group to commit funds over the short duration. In terms of long-term unemployment, the Scottish Government has also issued an offer of grant for £600,000 to support intermediate labour market opportunities for the long-term unemployment. These are defined as individuals who are aged over 25 and have been unemployed for at least 12 months. Despite several delays to this programme and the offer being received in November 2021, the expectation is that all 60 opportunities will be committed by the 31st of March 2022 and all associated expenditure will be defrayed by 31st of March 2023. It is also worth noting that while long-term unemployment are likely to face several changes in holding down an opportunity of this nature, the offer of grant solely supports the wages associated with this scheme and the staff resource required to support individuals. Therefore, it is proposed that any associated training costs and all administrative costs will be met from the Council's No One Left Behind allocation of £210,000. It is therefore proposed that this scheme is managed by the employability staff in economic development and the team reinforced from the bank register recently created by Education to support the Young Persons Guarantee Scheme and also include the second job broker role approved at Cabinet in September 2021. In addition, a finance assistant post will be required to support administration of this post and other Scottish Government funding allocations, whose reporting is extremely onerous. To support these additional staffing requirements, Cabinet is asked to support the allocation of £100,000 from the existing No One Left Behind budget. The anticipated outputs and outcomes from this programme include 60 participants accessing support and ILM opportunities. Paragraph 31 sets out the collaborative working being undertaken by employability staff within both education and employability services to develop a synergy in the delivery of employment opportunities across these funds to maximise the offer and provide long-term employment destinations while highlighting the importance of work such as SL33 as previously mentioned in the previous report. Furthermore, the Council as an employer will support these employability initiatives and following discussions with the DWP regarding opportunities for young people to gain valuable work experience within Council services. The Head of People and Culture has secured 50 placements with the vacancies being filled across the services by the 31st of March 2022. Further work is being considered around funding to develop these work placements into career pathways supported by the training and development to ensure that young people can achieve the necessary qualifications for the post. In terms of pace, members will recall the Scottish Government has issued a grant offer of £108,000 to support those residents who find themselves in the redundancy situation post-COVID. However, to date, PACE Partnership in Ayrshire has only reported 11 people being impacted by redundancy, and those who have sought support have been able to access support through ESF-funded programmes. Therefore, it is proposed that the Council seek to negotiate a degree of flexibility with the Scottish Government to ensure that this funding can be retained and used to support individuals access training and qualifications when redundancy situations do arise. The staffing element of this work can be carried out by existing work coaches within employability. Paragraph 35 sets out the proposals to create a work coach and finance assistant for a period of 15 months initially, with the costs of these posts being paid for from the No One Left Behind budget allocation for 21-22, and this resource will also fund training and qualifications required to participate in the long-term unemployment scheme to ensure that they achieve the goals of sustainable employment post-participation. Paragraphs 38 through to 43 sets out the HR, financial, risk and legal implications. And finally, Chair, paragraph 2 sets out the 9 recommendations, and as Linda's already alluded to, both Linda, myself and Ian will be able to answer any questions. Thanks, Chair.
Thanks, David. Loads of efforts there, and I think that's rightly so in terms of helping young people and long-term unemployed get job opportunities, and I think that particularly coming out as we recover from COVID, I think that's essential that we put quite a considerable amount of focus here. See, in terms of the Ayrshire growth deal, and and also other capital works for that matter, how do we make sure that we maximise opportunities for in terms of employability for young people and long-term unemployed to get work in those sectors, because it is major investment. I think we want to see the benefits of that investment in terms of help employability opportunities.
Thanks, Chair. As you'll see initially, the Employability Partnership Action Plan, that's in the paragraph that was highlighted, paragraph 11, highlights the diagram there, and you'll see that at Ayrshire, at a regional level, we're currently undertaking a regional skills investment plan. That investment plan is identifying presently within the overall sectors where the gaps are, where the current gaps are, and where emerging industries are coming, and that includes work to do with the Ayrshire growth deal. So the plan will identify a pathway of job opportunities both currently and in the future, and with current working arrangements with the regional economic partnership, we're already aware of a number of areas where we've got known issues. The hospitality industry is particularly one, and that's one where we're looking at the food and drink action plan, how that identifies opportunities right from agriculture right through to delivery within restaurants and shops of food produce. So there is an integrated process at regional level to look at the Ayrshire growth deal and the regional aspects and bring that in through the employability partnership. Also, just taking a highlight that at regional level as well, the Working for a Healthy Economy programme that we previously came back to update members on, that's now up and running, and will be subject to further updates to Cabinet, but that helps the unemployed get into work. So that will be linked in through the employability programme as well.
Thanks. We heard in the East Ayrshire Performance Report, the last Cabinet, there were labour shortages in the capital programme, so you're right. I mean, it's important that we see where there are gaps and trained opportunities to bridge that gap, and it's local people that fill it where possible. Linda?
Thank you, and through you, Chair, just to add to David's response, I'm currently also sitting on the Regional Skills Partnership as the education representative for the Regional Improvement Collaborative. So my work there clearly is about translating some of these shortages into actions in the school, and for members' information. I mean, we're thrilled. I mean, we've got foundation apprenticeships already running in some of these shortage industries like, hospitality, food and drink. Clearly, the other big piece of this that has come through COVID has been, about a refocus on the care sector and making that attractive to our young people. So in boiling this down, it's really essential that we see changes and continued changes to the curriculum in schools, because as we know, young people have already got, mindset on certain careers, and some of these areas are already saturated, and it's about really trying to channel some of the young people's activities further towards, those shortage areas where there's a much better guarantee of jobs. So it was just really, again, in demonstrating that ongoing partnership and my own presence along with David on the Regional Skills Investment Programme as it links to the AGD. Then clearly what we're doing is taking a lot of these big messages and scaling them into direct actions in our schools, which are indeed already ongoing. So I just thought that was maybe important in the context of this, because as we know, young people will get excited about opportunities where they can, clearly getting about the roles concerned and begin to find out more about them in a way that they wouldn't do in a traditional type school curriculum. So I just wanted to add that, Chair. Thank you.
Thanks, Linda. Babs, you get your hand up. Babs, mate. Oh, it's a straight hand. Okay. There's no comments or questions. Oh, Tom.
So just one or two wee points to raise. I think it's a good paper, and it does mean that we're trying to maximise the amount of money that's coming into the council from from Scottish Government and other places. Unfortunately, a lot of it's short-term funding, and that that is the issue we're trying to address. And for me, the problem I think is once you put somebody into training, you've got to keep that training going until they actually get the qualification or the experience they need. So I think as a council, we've got to look at how we can try and continue that training to make sure that the people actually get the qualification at the end of it, rather than simply stop it after 6 months because we've run out of money. So I think that's the first point. The second point, I noticed that the governance arrangements for this are through the Community Planning Partnership for the LEP. I just hope that local elected members are not going to get cut out of the process, and we're still going to get updates fed back to us in terms of what's actually happening on that, rather than simply just through the Community Planning Partnership. And when we talk about young people getting into jobs and getting started in life, and I know we've discussed it with Joe previously, we need to make sure that these young people are not negatively, and their families are not negatively impacted financially because the young person's taking a job at perhaps a low rate of pay. That then has a knock-on effect and other benefits that are getting paid to the family. So we need to try and address that. And it's good to see that there's only 11 people reported as being made redundant to the PACE system. But I think it is important, because we don't know where we're going to go in the future, that we do continue to try and keep that funding available for the future and not have to hand it back or lose it at all. So just a few points.
No, thanks, Tom. I think all very valid. Absolutely in the pace. We don't know where we're going to go next in terms of, as we come out of COVID and what else in terms of what happens with the economy. David.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. Just to pick up those points. You're right. I mean, the last thing we want to have is getting funding through that just recycles people, given work experience after every 6 months to get new work experience. I think we've maybe had that historically. What we want to do is have kind of real sustainable destinations. So it is about looking towards this, and I think in the report it does comment that both with the work that Linda and myself and Amanda are doing, supported by the whole management team, we are looking at how to take this forward to get positive destinations for the future, and so there's that as one area. The communication aspect, I totally agree with you. I think it's really important that all members are aware. I think it was raised through the Community Planning Partnership how in terms of what was going on in terms of economic development was maybe not as aware to members as what I'd anticipated. But so I think communication is important. So we will endeavour to make sure that information is right in front of you. In terms of the pace and 11 people, I think what you have to remember is that we went through a period where a lot of people were furloughed, and those people that were furloughed, we'd assumed that they may end up redundant, and to their benefit locally, that didn't happen to the degree that was anticipated. So we are getting into negotiation with the government to try and make sure that we don't lose the money, we actually recycle it and use it for the benefit. So hopefully that answers your question, Councillor Cook.
No, thanks, David. I don't know if Joe wants to comment on the other one about the financial loss.
It's a really important point. Always has been. I think with the wider plans that are beginning to take formation in the council, it's really important that this factor is taken into account, and the unintended consequence of good actions. And we have plans in place through revenues and benefits, but also through wider finance and ICT to bring support around that, should that happen. And we know from discussions there's a possibility or potential it could happen to certain age groups, and we're alert to that fact and remain so.
Thanks, Joe.
Thanks. And just to emphasise the point in terms of it's really important, it's quality training, long term, and no subsidised labour. That's really important. And I think we've really got to redouble our efforts. We're doing really good just now, but I think that's an area where we need to support to help recovery. Don't see any more hands up, so can we go to the recommendations? Can we agree with the recommendations? Okay, and that's the end of the education items. So let our education friends leave us. Nice to see you this morning. Okay, and we'll go to item 4, which is the pay and grading restructure. Amanda.
Thanks, Chair. Morning, members. This report's a joint report on behalf of myself and Chief Finance Officer and Head of Finance and ICT. The purpose of the report is to seek agreement from Cabinet for partial revision of the Council's pay and grading scales up to and including grade 5 in order to embed the Scottish living wage from the 1st of April 2022. The recommendations are laid out in paragraphs 3 through to 12, which are really the story from March 2019 right up to July 2021, laying out where we have to, as part of the previous pay award, embed the living wage into our pay scales by 31st of March 2022. Laying out the options that we looked at, and we brought a paper to Cabinet in February of this year. And at that point in time, we were going to explore further option 4. In paragraph 6, lays out the work that we did after that in option 4, and then started the quality impact assessment. Through the period, we've worked really extensively with our trade union colleagues, and it was then identified through this work of revising grade option 4 that if we changed the pay and grade model from grade 8 and upwards, it would increase the pay gap. So a further range of 7 options were developed, and we narrowed down to focus on option 7. This option 7 was considered at the management team in July of this year, and it still included options up to grade 7. Current position, starting in paragraph 13, option 7 still has some issues with us with the possible erosion of the Scottish living wage at the grade A. We then, at this point in time, took it to an external specialist for an impact assessment, and you'll see that laid out in 14. The real concerns there were that grade A only had 1 increment, and that we should only been implementing up to grade 5. Doing that beyond would break the relationship with the job evaluation. Paragraph 15 lays out the response to the options and confirming where we were. The quality impact assessment in the report is paragraphs 16 through to 23. There's been a considerable amount of work done here, and we've worked our way through all the characteristics, and we've done that in partnership with ALIA, and the details are there in paragraphs 16 through to 23. Trade unions 24 to 28, as I've already mentioned, we've worked very collaboratively with our trade unions. They've been involved in all aspects of the process. Our trade union colleagues have also been trained in job evaluation so that they've got a clear understanding of the process. When they received the information from the external specialist and confirmed that they were happy that we should only implement up to grade 5. However, they also raised concerns about the single point at grade A. So subsequently we did further work, and we introduced one additional spinal point in there. And at paragraph 26 lays out the proposed new grades A, B and C. The hourly rates that's associated there are the ones from the recent pay award, which are actually the rates for the 1st of April 2021. Obviously, negotiations will be ongoing for the pay award for 2022, and these will be the new rates of pay will be in the December salary. I would just note that within those 3 grades, it actually totals 3,227 of our council employees. It's unlike the last time when we implemented pay and grading. At that point in time, there was some employees in detriment or red circled. At this point in time, nobody will lose any money, and in the main, they will actually progress. It covers all our basic grade employees, our personal carers, our refuse collectors, our roads, our classroom assistant, cleaning, catering, etc. And I just also note that across the full council, 74 to 76% of our council employees are our East Ayrshire communities as well, but in these grades 1 to 5, that's actually considerably higher. Paragraph 27, noting that the Scottish living wage will increase for the 1st of April 2022 to £9.90. However, as an accredited living wage employer, we were proposing to introduce this from its date of announcement on the 15th of November 2021 to the 31st of March 2022, and then we would move to the rates in the table above. Legal and people and culture implications, net zero, quality impact assessment, as I say, is detailed within the report. Paragraphs 35 through to 38 lay out the financial implications. There's obviously a significant investment required for this, and that's detailed in the table in the top of page 84. 87, pardon me, paragraph 37 describes how we're going to manage that challenge, and it's about the budget for the vacancies and how services will look at that through their service redesigns. Paragraph 38 notes the comment about the living wage and raising to the £9.90. The cost of this would be £100,000 and can be met for council balances. Paragraph 43 lays out the communications and the programme that we intend to take forward, and we've already started with early communications out prior to Cabinet today, and the recommendations are in paragraph 2, and happy to take any questions.
Thanks very much, Amanda. Good report. Ian?
Thanks, Dougie. Yeah, I agree with you. It's an excellent report, and I thank Amanda. I think you look at an example of unintended consequences, which seemed like a relatively straightforward thing of introducing the Scottish living wage, the knock-on effect up the pay spine. And I'm really pleased to see that the discussions have included the unions, and I'm also particularly pleased to see that the backdated money will be coming in before Christmas. I think this is an excellent report. Excellent work, Amanda.
Thanks, Ian. Just, I think in terms of the pay award, I was going to just can we confirm? I think we're one of the few authorities that managed to do it, which is really good.
Confirm it will be in everybody's December salary.
That's great. Thank you, Amanda. That's about a festive cheer for Councillor Roberts, Jim.
Thanks very much, Chair. Amanda, Joe, this is a tremendous piece of work here. I think when you look at paragraph 7, you looked at the 7 different options being developed, and also you're working close liaison with the trade unions, and giving them a bit of training and the likes of the job evaluations. That would definitely help as well. But I think the fact you brought in independent assessment, that really helped to cement the whole process. But I think it's a good news story. It's been a lot of work, and it's a good example of collaborative working between the council and the trade unions to deliver this. So big well done from me. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Jim. John?
Just to say, it's a tremendous amount of work. It's great news for our employees, and it's great to see that most of the money got there before December.
Thanks, John. Any other points, any comments? No? Can I refer back to the recommendations on page 77? Can we agree recommendations? Okay, thanks everybody. Thanks all for your attendance. See you soon. Bye.
Thank you.